David had been in Japan for exactly 17 minutes and had already offended a floor, not a person, not a waiter, not a police officer, a floor. He stood frozen in the entrance of a traditional Japanese guest house, wearing muddy sneakers, while 6 people stared at his feet as if they had just confessed to a serious crime. David looked down, then back up. What? Nobody answered. An elderly woman named Mrs. Tanaka slowly pointed toward the entrance. Beside her stood her grandson Ren, a university student who had agreed to help David during his first week in Japan. Ren looked at David's shoes, then at the spotless wooden floor, then back at David. You walked through a public restroom before coming here, right? David hesitated. Technically. Mrs. Tanaka closed her eyes. Ren translated her expression. She says the floor had a good life. David immediately stepped backward. Unfortunately, he stepped onto the raised wooden floor again, with the other shoe. Mrs. Tanaka's eyes opened. Ren sighed. You offended it twice. David had come to Japan believing he was a hygienic person. He showered every day. He used deodorant. He owned dental floss. Most of it was still inside the box. But he owned it. Yet over the next 7 days, David would discover that some perfectly normal Western habits could appear deeply unpleasant, inconsiderate, or simply confusing in Japan. And this was only mistake number 1. Mrs. Tanaka handed David a pair of indoor slippers. They were small, very small. David had the feet of a man who looked like he had been assembled using spare canoe parts. He squeezed his toes inside. His heels remained completely exposed. Ren looked down. You're wearing them like hats for your toes. They don't fit. They're the biggest pair. David attempted to walk. The slippers flew off immediately. One hit the wall. The other disappeared beneath a cabinet. Mrs. Tanaka watched silently. David bowed. I am so sorry. Ren nodded. That phrase will be useful this week. In many Japanese homes, schools, temples, restaurants, clinics, and traditional accommodations, outdoor shoes are removed near the entrance. The idea is simple. Outside spaces are considered dirty. Inside spaces are kept clean. David understood this in theory. The problem was, he kept forgetting. Later that evening, he went outside to retrieve his suitcase, then returned wearing his shoes. Mrs. Tanaka pointed down. David gasped. Right! He removed them. 5 minutes later, he went outside to answer a phone call, then came back wearing his shoes again. Mrs. Tanaka pointed down. David looked horrified. Again? By the 4th incident, Mrs. Tanaka no longer needed to point. David entered. She simply rang a small bell. David looked down. Oh, come on. Ren smiled. She found her system. The next morning, David visited the bathroom. Near the toilet sat a separate pair of slippers. David noticed them, remembered the shoe rule, and felt extremely proud. Not today, David thought. He slipped them on, used the bathroom, washed his hands, then confidently walked into the kitchen, still wearing the toilet slippers. Mrs. Tanaka was preparing breakfast. Ren was drinking tea. Both looked at David's feet. David followed their gaze. What now? Ren placed his cup down. Those slippers live in the toilet. David looked toward the bathroom, then back at his feet. But they're slippers. Yes. And these are indoors. Yes. So I followed the rules. You followed half the rules. Mrs. Tanaka slowly moved the breakfast plates farther away from him. David immediately removed the slippers. So, these are bathroom-only slippers? Yes. And I just walked through the kitchen in them? Yes. Can we restart today? No. In many Japanese homes and businesses, toilet slippers remain inside the bathroom. They create another boundary between a potentially dirty area and the rest of the building. David had successfully removed the outside dirt, then replaced it with toilet dirt. Progress. technically, that afternoon. David and Ren spent hours exploring Tokyo. They rode crowded trains, sat on station benches, visited shops, walked through busy streets. David returned exhausted. He entered the guest room and threw himself face first onto the bed. Mrs. Tanaka happened to walk past. She stopped. David lifted his head. What? She stared at his jeans, then at the bed, then at the jeans again. Ren appeared behind her. You're wearing the same clothes you wore on the train. Yes. And now they're on your pillow. David sat up. My jeans are not on my pillow. His jean jacket sleeve was resting directly on the pillow. David moved it. Now they're not. Ren explained that many Japanese people prefer not to sit or lie on beds while wearing clothing that has been exposed to public spaces. Not everyone follows this strictly, but the idea makes sense. Train seats, public benches, restaurant chairs, crowded stations. Your clothes collect whatever those surfaces were carrying. David looked at his bed, then at his trousers, then slowly stood. So what am I supposed to do? Change into clean clothes. David opened his suitcase. He had packed 3 shirts, 1 pair of jeans, and 11 camera accessories. Ren looked inside. You packed a drone, but not pajamas? The drone was expensive. That won't make it comfortable to sleep in. Mrs. Tanaka returned 5 minutes later. David was wearing shorts, a travel neck pillow, and a t-shirt that said, I paused my game to be here. She stared. David smiled. Clean. Mrs. Tanaka nodded reluctantly. It was his first victory. It lasted 9 minutes. At lunch, David felt a tickle in his nose. He tried to ignore it. The tickle became an itch. The itch became an emergency. He grabbed a tissue, tilted his head, and blew his nose with the force of a ship leaving port. Honk honk! The restaurant went silent. A spoon stopped halfway to someone's mouth. A baby turned around. Somewhere in the kitchen, a chef dropped something. David looked around. Sorry. Ren leaned closer. That was very powerful. I have allergies. I think the building knows. In Japan, loudly blowing your nose in public is often considered unpleasant or disruptive. Many people prefer to excuse themselves, use a restroom, or handle it discreetly. Strangely, quiet sniffling may be tolerated more than a dramatic public nose blow. David found this confusing. So holding it in is polite. Being discreet is polite. What if I can't? Leave the room. David nodded. 10 minutes later, the tickle returned. He stood quickly. Excuse me. He rushed toward the restroom, but did not make it. Ah, Chow. The sound echoed through the hallway. Ren closed his eyes. At least he tried. By the next morning, David's allergies had become a mild cold. He coughed during breakfast. Mrs. Tanaka immediately placed a box of masks beside him. David waved them away. I'm fine. He coughed again. Ren moved his chair backward. It's not about whether you feel fine. Then what is it about? Everyone else. In Japan, wearing a mask when sick is often seen as a small act of consideration. It helps reduce the chance of spreading germs to people around you. David picked up a mask. He put it on upside down. Ren fixed it. David then covered only his mouth. Ren pulled it over his nose. David sighed. I can hear myself breathing. That means you're alive. At lunch, David forgot he was wearing it and tried to eat noodles through the mask. The noodles hit the fabric. Ren watched. David slowly lowered his chopsticks. This trip is changing me. It's damaging you first. Later, David entered a convenience store. He picked up 1 packet of snacks, then another, then another. He squeezed a sandwich, turned over a drink, opened a refrigerator, closed it, opened it again. Ren watched him handle nearly everything in the aisle. Are you buying any of this? I'm comparing. You've been comparing seaweed for 8 minutes. In many Japanese shops, customers avoid handling products unnecessarily. It keeps items neat and reduces needless contact. David nodded, then noticed the cashier watching him. He panicked and bought every item he had touched. Outside, Ren looked into the bag. You bought 12 types of seaweed. I felt judged. You judged yourself. That evening, Mrs. Tanaka prepared dinner. David took a huge bite of rice. Ren asked what he thought. David replied immediately, "It's ryoigu." A grain of rice flew from his mouth and landed beside Ren's cup. Silence. Ren looked at the rice, then at David. It tried to leave. Eating neatly and chewing with your mouth closed are highly valued in Japan. David apologized, then began telling a story while chewing fish. Mrs. Tanaka quietly placed a napkin between David and the table. David looked at it. "What's this?" Ren replied. "A safety barrier." A plate of dumplings sat in the middle of the table. David reached toward it using the same chopsticks he had been eating with. Ren stopped him. "Serving chopsticks." David looked beside the plate. A clean pair was waiting. "Oh." Moments later, Mrs. Tanaka asked for vegetables. David proudly served them using his personal chopsticks. Ren stared at him. "Why?" "I was helping. With mouth chopsticks." When sharing food, separate serving utensils are often used. The goal is simple. Keep saliva out of the communal dishes. Mrs. Tanaka removed the vegetables David had served and placed them on a separate plate. That plate remained untouched all evening. David kept glancing at it. "That feels personal." "It is." The next day, David bought a hot pastry at a market. He immediately began walking while eating it. Crumbs fell everywhere. He almost bumped into another pedestrian. Ren pulled him aside. "Stop. I'm not tired. Stop eating while walking." In many parts of Japan, people prefer to stand near the stall, finish eating, then continue walking. It reduces spills, litter, and collisions. David stood still. A pigeon appeared, then another, then 7 more. David held the pastry close. "This is mine." The pigeons moved closer. Ren stepped away. "You're on your own." After finishing, David searched for a bin. There wasn't one nearby. "Where do I put this?" "In your pocket." "For how long?" "Until you find a bin." Japan often has relatively few public rubbish bins, yet many streets remain remarkably clean. People commonly carry their rubbish with them. By the end of the day, David's pockets contained a wrapper, a bottle cap, 2 tissues, and a receipt stuck to his phone. Mrs. Tanaka looked at his bulging jacket. David smiled. "I'm protecting Japan." Ren nodded. "At the cost of your trousers?" On Thursday, Ren took David to a hot spring. "Are there rules?" David asked. "Yes." "How many?" "Enough." David removed his shoes, washed thoroughly before entering, and placed his towel beside the bath. For once, everything was perfect. He lowered himself into the water, relaxed, then pulled out his phone. "Group photo?" Everyone turned. Ren snatched the phone away. "No photos." "Privacy?" "Yes." David sank lower. "I nearly had it." An elderly man moved to the other side of the bath. Ren watched him leave. Nearly. After using the restroom, David rinsed only his fingertips. Ren stared at him. "That was not hand washing." "My hands touched water." "So do fish." Ren made him use soap. Clean between his fingers. Wash around his thumbs. And dry properly. David finished proudly, then immediately touched his dirty phone. Ren looked at the phone. David looked at Ren. "Don't." David cleaned the phone, then dropped it on the floor. Ren walked away. "I'm retiring." The next morning, David coughed into his hand. Ren stared at him. "What now?" Your germs are on your hand." David looked at the door handle he had just touched. Then the teapot, then Wren's shoulder. David slowly removed his hand. "Sorry." Using a tissue, a mask, or coughing into your elbow is more hygienic. David tried coughing into his elbow and accidentally punched himself in the chin. Mrs. Tanaka watched. David rubbed his jaw. "Cleanliness hurts." Ding. That afternoon, David ran out of clean shirts. Instead of washing one, he sprayed it with cologne, then sprayed himself, then sprayed the room. Wren entered and immediately stepped backward. "What happened?" "I freshened up." "You declared war on the air." Strong fragrances can be unpleasant in trains, restaurants, and other shared spaces. Cleanliness is not the same as hiding an odor beneath another stronger odor. Mrs. Tanaka opened every window. It was raining. She preferred the rain. David finally washed the shirt. Unfortunately, he also washed his passport. By Saturday, David had transformed. He removed his shoes, changed out of outdoor clothes, wore a mask when sick, washed his hands properly, used serving chopsticks, stopped eating while walking, carried his rubbish, respected the bath rules. Mrs. Tanaka invited him to a final family dinner. David entered carefully. Shoes off, correct slippers, clean clothes, washed hands, perfect manners. Mrs. Tanaka nodded. Wren smiled. Even the floor seemed to forgive him. Then David felt a sneeze coming. He looked for a tissue. None. He raised his hand, then remembered not to sneeze into it. He tried to use his elbow, but he was holding a bowl of soup. The bowl tipped. Soup flew through the air and landed perfectly inside David's outdoor shoe. Silence. David stared at the shoe. Wren stared at the shoe. Mrs. Tanaka stared at the shoe. Then, for the first time all week, Mrs. Tanaka burst out laughing. Wren laughed too. David looked confused. "I thought I failed." Wren shook his head. "No, you protected the floor." David looked at the soup-filled shoe. "So I passed." Mrs. Tanaka raised one finger. Almost. On David's final morning, Mrs. Tanaka handed him a gift, a pair of extra-large indoor slippers. David put them on. They fit. Wren handed him a small handbook titled, "How Not to Horrify Japan." David opened it. Every page was blank. "Why is there nothing inside?" Wren shrugged. "We ran out of space." David smiled. During his trip, he realized that many Japanese hygiene habits were not simply about avoiding dirt. They were about consideration. Outside and inside. Private and shared. Your comfort. And everyone else's comfort. Not every person in Japan follows every custom in exactly the same way. But the principle behind many of them is simple. Think about the next person. Do not spread your germs when you can avoid it. Do not bring outside dirt into clean spaces. And do not turn your habits into somebody else's problem. David lifted his suitcase, put on his outdoor shoes, and stepped outside. Mrs. Tanaka waved. David waved back, then froze. He looked down. He was still wearing one indoor slipper. Wren stared at him. Mrs. Tanaka reached for the bell. Ding. David closed his eyes. "I'm never graduating, am I?" Wren smiled. "Maybe next trip." Some habits that seem completely normal in one country can appear strange in another. And sometimes, the fastest way to understand a culture is to notice the small things people do every day.